over a week out from my tournament. I was going to compete in the Nashville Open, and as I said, I was going to compete. Basically, training was going great, rolling, and I was coming up from a sweep, and I got my finger caught in the mat. Didn't really have any pain, but as I looked down, my finger, pinky, was hanging down, and I was like, what the hell? And so I kind of initially knew what had happened. I've injured my fingers before. I've torn ligaments on the side here, which, you know, isn't too bad of a deal. I was able actually to tear that and still train. Didn't really take any time off. But this being my pinky and the type of injury it was, it kind of got me thinking, you know, it's a little bit of a different type of injury. I'll kind of break it down for you guys. And initially, I was like, I'm taping it up and I'm going to compete, period. No questions asked. And then I started thinking about, you know, what would I have said to myself if, you know, I was on the other side? If I had a client, or if I was the physical therapist for myself, which in a lot of cases I am, what would I have told myself? And the injury is kind of a unique one in the fact that it's not necessarily going to hinder me right now. I could probably compete and train right now, but I started thinking long-term and longevity. You know, I want to do jiu-jitsu for a really long time. I want to train and hopefully compete for years to come. This type of injury, basically, it's called a mallet finger injury, and here's a picture of what my finger looked like immediately after it happened. I realized that, you know, this type of injury, if it's not addressed pretty quickly, it can become a chronic thing, and it can become basically a thing that where you may not get full function of your finger back. And what it is like, if you think of your finger, we'll use this finger for example, you have kind of like a pulley system, right? So to straighten your finger, there's pulleys attached here that, you know, when you extend, it straightens that finger, right? What happened to me was when I caught my finger on the mat, it basically tore this tendon here. And by way of doing that, I could not extend my finger, so my finger was kind of hanging down like this. So the treatment, you know, essentially what you want to do is you want to go to the doctor and get it assessed. The most serious thing that can happen is an avulsion fracture or a fracture of the finger. A lot of times that tendon can pull a piece of the bone off of you know, the bone here in the finger, and that could require again splinting, but it could also require surgery, or they put like a pin in your finger to keep it straight. So I had everything assessed, everything's fine, no fractures or anything, but you know, longevity wise, you know, this is something that has to be addressed. And usually the healing is putting it in a splint to keep this joint straight. And that has to be that way for about 60 days or about 2 months. You know, it depends on the individual, give and take. But if you ever let the finger during that healing process bend, that knuckle, it's called your DIP or distal interphalangeal joint. If you let that bend, it basically restarts that healing process. So, and again, if you don't splint it within like about a week, I mean, really you want to splint it as soon as possible, but if you don't splint it in about a week, that tissue can maybe never grow back or kind of scar back down and heal back up. So, you know, I started thinking longevity-wise, and I went back and forth. Initially, like I said, I had no doubt in my mind I was going to compete. And then I started thinking, like, shit, like, what would I have told myself, and what is the right thing to do? Even though it's not a major injury, you know, it's something I could probably compete with. I have to think long-term and long-term effects. You know, I am a physical therapist. I work with my hands. I also make videos for you guys, and I have to, you know, walk the walk and talk the talk. You know, I have to do both things, and I feel like I'm punking out. I feel like I'm letting people down. I've been dealing with my ego a little bit, like what are people going to think of me? What are people going to say? You know, is he scared to compete? Things like that, you know, and then you think that stuff in your own head. You second guess yourself, like, well, am I just being, you know, being a baby about this? Am I being weak about this? Am I doing things the right way? And set my ego aside and be my own kind of patient and try to think about what the hell would I tell somebody else to do. And even though it's an injury that's not terribly major and doesn't really hinder a whole lot right now, if it's not taken care of properly, it can, limit, and impair your function long term. So that was my thinking. I tell people all the time, think long term, think longevity. The sport is something that a lot of us plan on doing forever. So my thought process was, I do want to do this forever. I don't want to, if I can get full function back in my finger, I want that. I prefer that, and that's the goal, ideally. So that was my thought process, and it was really hard to get to this point, and I think it's a tough decision because we all have that desire to compete. A lot of us are athletes, or we've put this time in, and we've trained really, really hard, and we've put all this emotion and mental training in, and physical training in, and dieting, and I was cutting weight. You feel like it's all for nothing at this point, but I guess there's a bigger lesson here. So guys, I'm going to take you all through my little journey with this finger. I've been trying out some different splints. This is one that I'll talk about a little bit. It's kind of a weird setup right now. I'll talk to you guys about things that I've done. I have not trained since the injury. I'm going to figure out exactly what I can and can't do. Some follow-up videos, I'm going to talk to you guys about basically signs and symptoms, kind of what happened, breakdown of treatment and what treatment kind of looks like. But recommendation-wise for treatment, go see a doctor, get an x-ray, get it checked out, and make sure that everything is okay in the finger, nothing's fractured. That's number one. And then, splinting, I'll talk to you guys about the different types of splints that I found, and what I like and what I don't like, and some things like that. And I'll take you guys through that healing process. So, guys, that's it. If you have any questions, shoot me a question down below, and I'll see you next time for another video.